Hello and welcome to my video on the different types of practice. The first thing that we're going to look at is how we can vary our practice, how we can change our practices, and we can change the timing, we can change the variability, we can change the order in which we practice skills, and we can change the actual method of practice itself. The first thing we're going to look at is a change in the timing, and this is where we're looking at between distributed and massed practice. So this is an example of a distributed practice. So this is typically where there are long rests or breaks in between the performance of the skill, and you can see the guys at the back having a rest whilst their teammates are completing the skill before they go on and do it again. Now normally, I know this is being done with a professional football team, but this is normally suited to a beginner, someone who's less experienced and less well motivated than these guys here. Now, distributed practice can also be where we vary the skill being performed. So previously the footballers were just dribbling the football. Here the performers are completing lots of different skills. So they're dribbling, they're shooting, they're passing, and this is another way of distributing the practice. Moving on to massed practice. In terms of timing, this is where there's little or no interval in between each of the skills being practiced. And it's basically more suited to people who are experienced, older, fitter, and more motivated. So obviously, because there's little or no rest period, this is more likely to cause fatigue and issues with motivation and things like that. But obviously this guy seems to be doing all right anyway. So now we're going to look at the change in variability, and what we mean by that is how much variation there is in the environment we're performing the skill in. Here we can see a golfer performing continuous shots from the same position and sinking them in a hole 10 feet away. Now notice how little changes. The hole stays the same, the direction it is from him, the position it is from him stays the same, his shot stays the same. It's a very closed environment, and this is very, very good for practicing those closed types of skills. This is his 56th putt, which he just misses. We're now looking at a more variable practice, and you have to think of this as a continuum really. So on one end you've got a totally fixed practice, on one end you've got a totally variable practice. So here the skill of a 3-point shot is being repeated, but we are changing one aspect. We're changing the position from which it's shot. So he's taking a couple of shots each time and then changing the position. This is marginally slightly more game realistic than the previous exercise, which is totally closed. So we are now introducing some variety in the practice. This is further down the scale again, so we've got a passing in rugby drill, and we've got more things that we're changing, more variables which are open, so the environment is more open, and this is much more suited to open skills which are going to be changing all the time, and it helps the player to adapt that skill to a variety of different situations. So it's really good for interactive skills and for open skills. Here obviously we've got the opposition, the teammate, the timing of the pass, the area that we're working in. These things can all change. So now we're looking at the change in order, and this is where we looked at our experiment at how we present practice. The first one we're going to have a look at is blocked. This is where one skill is rehearsed repeatedly a number of times before moving on to the next skill. But here Roger Federer is warming up at Wimbledon for a tennis competition, and he's completing the same skill repeatedly. He's now moving into the net to start practicing the second skill. So this is the second skill, and he's practicing his volleying at the net, which he's going to do repeatedly. Now he's moved on to his third skill, where he's going to warm up by practicing his serve repeatedly. This is where the order A, B, 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 C, 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 you practice all of skill 1, all of skill 2, and all of skill 3. Here we have an example of a serial drill. This is well suited to skills which take place in a specified order, and volleyball is a really good example of this. So here we can see the players performing one skill and then rotating around. They're doing a dig, a set, and then a smash. And they're doing it in that order. And as they rotate round, they'll do skill A, then B, then C, then A, then B, then C, then A, then B, then C. And this is, as I say, is really good for skills like volleyball, where you have a continuous playing and the performance of a skill in a set order. The only thing that we haven't spoken about so far is the order of practice being random, and this might come up, say for example, in a tennis match or something like that, where, for example, the player has to start with a serve but then respond to whatever shot is played by their opposition. This might be a ground stroke or a volley, and the order in which the skills are performed is totally random. It depends on the opposition. That's a random order. Now, there is, as we know, scientific evidence saying that random practice is actually far better for you in the long term than blocked practice. So blocked practice has much better short-term benefits, but random practice has much better long-term benefits. Now we're going to have a look at changing the method of practice. And here we can see some athletes going through mental rehearsal or mental practice. And this is particularly useful for going through the cognitive aspects of the skill. Although research strongly suggests that actually it does have physiological impact on the body as well. So your visualization actually has a physical result. And it's really useful for sports where maybe you only get one go at the event, or where it might be quite dangerous like this. At the other end of the scale is physical practice. And this is, as we all know, physically taking part in the practice itself, just like this gymnast. Just to recap then, there's lots of different ways we can change the type of practice. We can change the timing, so from distributed, where there's lots of rest or a different event in between, to massed practice, where there's little or no interval in between each skill. We can change the variability in how open or closed the environment is, from a fixed closed drill on one end to a variable open practice on the other end of the spectrum. We can change the order in which the skills practiced, from blocked to random to serial, and each again has its own areas where it suits that particular activity. We can change the method as well, so we can have mental rehearsal or we can have physical rehearsal and practice as well. So if you think about it, it is possible to have a practice that is massed, fixed, blocked and physical, so it ticks all of those boxes. Anyway, I hope this presentation's been some help to you. Good luck.